listening to the Adventuring Party for the third week of July 2021. This week, the news! And it's not just about RPGs. Unprecedented. The Adventuring Party, talking about gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Eoin.
I'm Liam.
I'm still Savage.
And I remain Shane.
And today, it's all the news that's fit to listen to. No, wait, that's the probe droid from Empire Strikes Back. Alright, it doesn't matter too much. We're here for all the news that's fit to talk about. And we're going to lead off with some Warhammer news. Specifically, Warhammer Plus, which initially you might have heard reported as Warhammer's streaming service, because if there's anything 2021 needs is yet another streaming service delivering exclusive media content. But it is in fact more than just streaming. It's shockingly looks like, if you were in at all for some of the stuff already, a good deal. But only if you were in already for the stuff. So Warhammer Plus is going to give you in-house developed Warhammer animations, including a bunch of great fan work stuff that has been co-opted in. You're going to grandfather into the system. They saw a Start Ace and said, let's just get that guy to do everything. Looking at a Start Ace, I'd be like, yeah, that seems about right.
Why reinvent the wheel, you know?
This guy seems to be a genius. Let's just get him to do all our stuff. Yeah, that works.
Oh, hold on, this does not sound like GW. Shouldn't they just send a cease and desist letter and bury it?
You got to remember, GW has had a bit of a sea change in management, so they've done some things to make themselves a little less oppressively evil, and a little more, hey, it's all about a community and developing our, doing your projects and sharing your art, and everyone's come by ad. And in comparison to the alternative of the human face being smashed with a $80 boot every 2 weeks, it's
that their marketing department and legal department don't actually have to think that they exist in the 40th millennium or the 41st millennium. Yeah, I mean, a couple of years ago they started putting out like plush slick videos and like making joke video. Like when they were releasing the new orc tracks, they made like a joke Audi video. Four-sprung dirt orc. You're just bashing a looted vehicle with a spanner, like.
So hold on, it's not okay. So they've got their multimedia on. It's not just a streaming service, or it's not really a streaming service, is it? But it is a lot of other things.
Not just.
It's a lot of things. So I mean, you get premium access to events. They have you get a free miniature every year. Well, free because you're paying your subscription, obviously, and you can buy a second miniature off them as well. You can get access to the Warhammer apps, which, if I'm correct, that includes the current rule set. Is that right? For 40k and Age of Sigmar.
It tends to have all of the list building stuff. I don't know what the new one's going to look like, but a lot of the ways people build and maintain their lists for play was to basically go to the Warhammer Builder app.
As far as I know, you still do have to tag your codex in. So if you buy your codec, you still have to add that on. So that is not included in the base subscription. You still buy your codex. There's also a vault of the White Dwarf issues, Warhammer publications as well. It's
like the old back issues. I'd be fascinated if it went back to the very start and be like, oh, this was when we were an RPG magazine. Wild, huh?
Yeah. You can finally get all those Space Crusade expansions that you were looking for that were back in the day. And presumably offer some of the print and play stuff that were inserts in magazines, Warhammer or White Dwarf magazines back in the 90s. It's the last time I probably read one. I gotta say, this sounds like a move in the right direction. I think the first thing I heard about it that maybe raised an eyebrow was the model you get with your year's subscription. But if I'm right in saying you get it at the end of the year. It's like,
you do get it at the end of the year, and it's your choice of two. For this year, there is, I think it's an Orc Knob, and there's a Sniper as well. There's like a
very nice model.
Vindicare Assassin.
And a cool bit of terrain.
I'm actually probably going to subscribe for a year to get the Vindicare model to give to a friend of mine, because he had a Vindicare in our long-running Dark Heresy campaign, and I think you get a kick out of that model.
So you hear that? A year from now, you're getting a model.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're nice models, and you can choose to buy the second one if you want.
The Vindicare on its piece of kind of scenery terrain standing is quite the thing. It's sitting up in a ruined window or something, isn't it?
It's actually from a piece of art. That was an art piece that someone's gone, oh, this is making an amazing model, and sculpted the model.
Wait, a piece of art like a 2D picture that someone had done.
It was in one of the RPG books or one of the Codex Assassination.
And they've got 3D models as well, don't they? Maybe something they should consider bundling in with all this multimedia and your one free model is some STL files, given that that's the way that the Warhammer community is sort of going. Just a thought, lads.
Heresy. I don't think you'd want to be encouraging people to print their own.
Too far.
Well, no, they've said they're happy with certain kinds of 3D printing in official tournaments, but it's very restricted. Now, couldn't they help a brother out?
Well, last thing I heard is that they were really clamping down on the amount of non-Citadel miniature stuff in...
They swing back and forth on it, and it's basically like if it's an entirely 3D printed scratch based thing, they typically don't like it. But if it's just like you just printed a different gun and stuff, they tend to be a bit more lenient on it. Where they kind of have to tiptoe is like a huge amount of people scratch build orc vehicles. And, traditionally that would have been done by bashing together kits from lots of the different factions and stuff. Whereas now you can go, you know what, I'm going to print whatever mad looking front bumper I want for this. Rather than going, right, well, what have I got lying around? Oh, well, sure, I'll cut up that traffic cone and I'll use that as the top of the thing or something, It's very hard to turn around to an orc player and say, this has to be X percentage of GW model, given that they could have totally scratch built it from something that's nothing to do with GW, or that they printed themselves.
Yeah, and my current understanding on proxy models is that, or proxy add-ons like swapped heads or whatever, is that it's okay to have 3D printed versions of Warhammer models or Warhammer 40k models, as long as you yourself have 3D modeled them. So you can't buy the STL files, which is an interestingly sort of old man trying to kind of keep the fence approach to things. It's nothing to do with Warhammer Plus, but it does strike me that they've got this opportunity here to maybe get out in front of some of this heavy traffic, because it ain't going away.
So if Jez Goodwin hand sculpted his own Eldar models, he could use them in the tournament.
Exactly. And if you're as good as Jez Goodwin, your army's going to look as good on the table. But if you've just cracked open Blender for the first time, Blobbyhead Marines it is.
This to me is a pretty interesting move, because like everything is going more towards a subscription model, because they just see that it's, rather than relying on the next big release, you're continually milking money out of people. It could well be that, I don't know how their sales figures are doing. I believe GW, like most of gaming, did pretty well. Obviously the mortar shops did do pretty badly, but I think online sales in general from Warhammer have been pretty solid throughout the pandemic. Certainly their share price is high enough to relative to what it was before the start of the pandemic. But yeah, it's interesting that they're moving towards this, because like, how could they go for a subscription model other than your magazine and stuff? But people don't really subscribe for magazines anymore, so it's kind of, I haven't really seen other games companies deciding to go along this way. I guess your D&D Beyond and stuff is subscription as well, isn't it?
They all have a toe in this water, but none of them are willing to. It's like, my opinion is that sometime in the next couple of years, somewhere in the hobby space, contenders are going to arise that are going to go fully into this digital first and subscription first, and the box set and sort of core book boys are going to be left choking on the dust, because they've had long enough to see which way the wind is blowing, and they are this is tentative. I think the Warhammer Plus stuff is good. I love the multimedia stuff. The storytelling around Warhammer 40,000 has always been great fun and top notch, and the idea that they're getting the best of the fandom, the semi-professionals, professionals out there who've made things like Astartes. If you haven't seen it, folks, go and watch it. It's amazing. Even if you know absolutely no, in fact, it works so well because it's basically a silent movie. There's no dialogue, but it tells you everything you need to know about what's cool about being a Space Marine. This is good moves. I think that a model at the end of the year is just, haha, are you having a laugh? Like, front load this stuff. You want the incentives up front. STL files, I think, would be a huge step in the right direction for them, because it would get them out in front of where everything else is going.
You know what I'd do for the STLs?
Go on.
I'd have a competition.
Oh, yeah?
And I'd say anyone can submit designs, and winner gets a big pile of Warhammer merch, like, you know, €1,000 or £1,000 worth of shopping in the shop and whatever, and do a bunch of runners up, and then you put up the STL files for anyone who wants to get them from the exclusively on the community, and be like, yep, there you go.
Part of the subscription, or otherwise you can buy them, yeah. And they'll make their money back they'll make their money back endless times over. The quality of what's coming, we'll see.
What do you guys think about the price? £5 or $6 a month, or £50 or $60 a year if you go for the annual subscription. So I guess you kind of get 2 months free if you're doing that.
But sure, you get half a Space Marine for that.
It apparently works out about the same price as if you were just subscribing to the app previously.
No euro price, because, you know, it's not like the Eurozone is one of the largest markets in the world.
I mean, a lot of that comes down to how these things are reported. Yeah, I can find out what something is in Canadian dollars before I can find out what is in euros from news sites.
But I'm looking at the Warhammer site itself. And they have an asterisk, or imperial credits, or your local currency. It's just like, the Eurozone is one of the largest markets. What are you doing?
What do I think about it? Yeah, price is fine.
But I mean, I think it's an interesting way, because they're going to be delivering a bunch of kind of show content as well, where they'll be doing kind of modeling shows and lore shows, and they're produced. So it's kind of them trying to see what Content Factory stuff is going to work for them, what's going to drive some interest. And they have had, like, I think the painting classes stuff they do is actually pretty good content, and yeah.
But I don't know that that's going to be enough for somebody, for me, who, like, I do a little bit of modeling, I do a little bit of painting, I haven't done wargaming in years. I don't know that this is going to be enough to soak me in, but I think if you're an active Warhammer player, I think this would be quite enticing. Painting tutorials, YouTube is full of painting tutorials. Lore stuff, like, again, there's tons of YouTube channels. Book of Choyer is probably the best of them that does it as well, and they do it with, like, Total Warhammer videos and stuff. So I don't know, like, will that be enough to entice people in for £60?
If you had I think you have the list builder app already, you'll get this, right? I think if you're into the whole, if you're kind of a casual ISK fan who wants a bit of content, regularly delivered, high quality stuff,
pick up the Black Library books when they come out, maybe, and you go, yeah, sure, I'll read White Dwarf when it comes out now.
The archives could be a big draw for people, because it's actually quite difficult to get the early White Dwarf stuff legitimately. So if you actually did a good archive, which was, this is, if it goes, it says basically, like, the back catalogue.
Yeah, they get 2020 immediately.
Yeah.
And because presumably they're PDFs somewhere. And presumably someone has an OCR scanner running at the moment to try and capture White Dwarf 7 from, 1986 or whatever. No.
If you started putting up 12 issues a month going back and you're working back in time, it could be very attractive in a year's time. You could be like, oh, we can go back and, like, I think them putting up the old classic stuff, like when it was an RPG magazine, a lot of value to that.
There's great stuff in there, great fiction, great artwork that you wouldn't necessarily find. Some bits of GW love to repeat some artwork again and again, and then others you never see after it's been used a couple of times in a White Dwarf. So getting to see those again and having them kind of just to look at and draw inspiration from. Liam's right. There's a lot of this stuff does exist for free by the community.
I guess this could be where their cease and desist will come in. If they start putting out lore stuff, will they be going to YouTube? Take that down.
I don't think they have a legal leg to stand on there. No, what I'd say might be worth the $5.99 a month, which, consider this, is probably like a copy of 2000 AD probably costs about that now. It's been a while since I read it. And that's weekly. So if my £6 a month, or dollars, or whatever that translates into euro, whatever that is, shekels, if that gets me 2-3 episodes of some quality animation or CGI animated stuff, because it's all, they've got kind of the Hammer and Bolter, is that the anthology show they're doing? They've announced some of the stuff, or maybe one or two good Warhammer movies a year. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm paying more for that for Netflix. There's weeks where I don't watch any Netflix at all. So, and I really like 40k fiction. But the big but here is that, like a lot of Netflix anime shows, I'd have my questions about what's the quality going to be like. Historically, Warhammer 40k productions have been a bit lacking. Not really there. They get the actors, but the quality isn't there. The scenes aren't big enough. They're not lavish enough. There's not enough action. There's like 4 Space Marines. I want to see thousands. I want to see Warhammer War. I want to see blood and chaos raining from the mountaintops. And that's all costs a lot of money to put on screen.
I think one of the interesting things is one of the best love pre-2005 Warhammer productions is just the cutscenes from the epic 40k game, with just this really cool commissar who's very good at pointing a lasgun at people threateningly. So I think if they're going to be successful in that, they're going to be wanting to focus on tone and imagery rather than plotting. And I don't suspect that we're going to see Shakespeare here, but we are possibly going to see some amazing visuals and art design and the odd meme, perhaps.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. I mean, Blur Studios have done very good work for them on their game promos in the past, or the kind of cutscene stuff. Go back to the original Dawn of War and check out the opening cinematic for that. And you can see that kind of quality of stuff now on Netflix in CGI anthology shows. But keeping up the volume of content you need to be able to say you're a TV subscription service or a streaming service, it's high and you need a lot of money. Now we know GW has a lot of money, but are they willing to pour production company amounts of money into this to justify the $60 a year that they're looking for? Still cheaper than Netflix, but they're not offering the hundreds of shows that Netflix are offering. They're offering, I think, 2-3 shows a month?
Yep, so far.
Is that? Do we know what we're getting in terms of shows?
Oh, well, we'll put a link up in the show notes to exactly what they're promising there. But they've got all the previews and the animations.
I'm not talking about the hobby tutorial stuff, which I think is a good idea, but get that anywhere and a pretty high quality as well. I think if I was looking at this, because I don't play the game, but I've put money in GW's pockets over the years, even when I'm not playing their games, just to read the novels or play a computer game or whatever. So I am interested in seeing what level they're committing to in terms of storytelling on an ongoing basis. Because that is expensive. No getting around it.
I think if you're in for the apps already, you'll go in for this. And I think everyone else is going to wait and see what sort of content is on it and maybe make the decision to hop in after a few months if the stuff is there and it's good. Now, moving on, there's some other news we want to discuss. The UK Games Expo for 2021, which is running between the 30th of July to the 1st of August, announced on the 7th of July that it would not enforce any COVID-19 health and safety requirements for the returns to Birmingham's NEC later this month. This is more or less on foot of, I'd say, the Declaration of Freedom Day and all that other stuff. So they're not going to be requiring anyone to wear a mask. They're not going to be requiring anyone to have a negative COVID test. They're not going to require any social distancing. It's a free-for-all. Pandemic's over, lads.
Papa Nurgle loves it.
Freedom! You probably can't hear that. Put my mask on. Okay, take that off. That's a visual joke that no one listening to this is going to get. So
yeah, but it was very funny, Mick. It was very funny.
I had my moment. Yeah, well, see, the thing is, I can make the choice to wear a mask anytime I like, even in the comfort of my own podcast. And I guess anyone going to the show can as well, right?
Yes and no. You can make the decision to put your mask on, but if you sign up for an event and you turn up and there's absolutely no social distancing, the only thing you can do is leave.
Or suck it up. Germs and all.
The thing is, masks are... The ironic thing about masks are much better at preventing me wearing a mask from infecting you than preventing you who's infected and I'm wearing a mask. It doesn't really protect me that much because to get you in through the eyes or get you in through the other way instead. I had a full respirator that I wore when I was teaching. I had to do some in-person teaching because I was like, this is not necessarily going to be protecting me well enough. And if you have a look at any of the how infectious the Delta variant is, for example, indoors at all is a bad idea if this is going to spread. Now, personally, I wouldn't go to this. I wouldn't have gone anyway, but I wouldn't go to this. But that's me. That's my decision.
Yeah. I'd be wary even. I've gotten my first dose and I think I'll be getting my second dose in around when the expo's on, so I think it's 2 weeks then after that It should be that my immune system should be up to it. But even still, I'd be pretty wary about going. Even if the timeline of my vaccination was pushed back a couple of weeks and I was fully inoculated, I'd still be pretty wary about going.
And the thing is, the majority of people in the UK are going to be vaccinated with AstraZeneca, which is more limited efficacy against the Delta variant, as far as we can tell. So, ironically, this is probably going to be 3 weeks after, guts of 3 weeks after the finals of the European Championships. So you might get a bunch of super spreader events off that, and then you'll go into this, and hey, there's an opportunity for some more for a different. Maybe the soccer hating nerd population will get to have their own go to, a nice big spread within it.
I guess I'm just wondering, like, is the appetite there? Because maybe I'm in my own little bubble, but it seems like, okay, like I've gone out for a couple of lunches and stuff like that, and I've been in beer gardens and stuff, and certainly they seem to have been pretty crowded. And amongst tables themselves, there's no masks, there's no social distancing and all that. I think people are just kind of going, we're outdoors, hooray, it's fine. And this would be age groups who probably would be vaccinated with their first dose, and with age groups who wouldn't be vaccinated. So I don't know. Like, for me, I look and go, no. But I'm wondering, like, is the appetite out there to go?
I think there's a vocal minority of the population who just wants to open her up and let her rip and let the devil take the hindmost, and all over the place. And they're very loud, and they're on radio banging their drum the whole time. And a bunch of other people are quietly miserable just waiting for this to run its course and be over. And
realistically, like, what does the UK Games Expo need in terms of attendance? Like, what percentage of their regular attendance are they going to need to make it financially viable? And will they get anywhere near that?
Couldn't tell you. I would say their usual numbers are about 25k.
25k, yeah. At 2019, they're 26k. They did an online event last year. So there's so many different factors at play here.
I haven't been to UK Games Expo. The only thing I've been in Birmingham would be PaizoCon UK. Like, what's the profile of the audience like? Because certainly at PaizoCon UK, they weren't fit.
Bald, beardy, shirt wearing, and overweight. No, that's not fair. That's just me. It's the standard nerdcore.
Yeah, there was a lot of people there who would have a lot of underlying health conditions. I guess that would probably be the polite way of saying it. So they would be highly at risk.
Hold on, we know D&D is trending younger now. So they're fitter, they're thinner, they've got more tattoos, they've got better hair. So they're probably a little more healthy than we are. Okay, look, here's my take on this. Why the all or nothing approach? Like, why have they decided to min-max their event? There's nothing to stop event organisers in the UK or anywhere else setting their own standards, regardless of what Freedom Day means in a legal context.
They can go beyond the minimum if they want. And that seems to be what they've gone. Whatever the minimum legal requirement is what we're going to go with. And at the moment in the UK, for late June, early August, the minimum is nothing.
Well, I mean, that's yes and no. We're highlighting the things they said they're not doing. Now, they are continuing to, there's hand sanitizer will be
What's
there.
the point in hand sanitizer? Everybody's going on with the hand sanitization, but it gets in through your eyes, through your nose, through your mouth. People are obsessed with sanitizing and rubbing down with stuff, but in terms of viral transmission, we now know that's not a big pathway.
Format transmission is not a big issue.
The venue itself reports that it has hospital-level ventilation.
Which hospital?
So they're also doing their best to put people's minds at ease. Yeah.
Look, ultimately, the Tories have said it's okay, and a bunch of people in the UK, they love licking that boot. So
Oh, because we're such a bunch of rugged individualists ourselves here in Ireland.
Absolutely. Well, some of us are. Some of us.
Shane, you got a take on this?
Well, it's very easy to get into political mode about this and say, well, clearly the entire steering committee for the UK Game Expos are hardcore Brexiteers who would really like if of COVID just wiped out all these damn Nordies or whatever. But I suspect it could just simply be a matter of laziness, is that they don't want to invest in the type of, let's be honest, probably private security that you would need to police something as big as Birmingham's NEC and all of the buildings around it.
And to reduce the capacity of other events by making sure there was adequate social distancing.
Yeah. I suspect there's a piggy bank aspect to this. They've looked in the piggy bank and went, if we don't get people through the door this year, we're done. Because a lot of these, I mean, as most of us here will know from being involved in all sorts of different types of events, they're almost all running very tight to the line. It's not a place where you build a huge amount of profit from any given year. Now, they've said that there's no cap on the amount of people who can attend, for example, which does speak to, they really do need bodies in the door to make this worth their while. I can't see into their minds. I can't, and I won't subscribe any political leanings or motivations. I personally think it's odd that they would take such a minimal approach. I think Shane's right. There might be a certain amount of couldn't be arsed, which may speak to their worldview or otherwise. I think when is it on? It's on in August. It starts pretty soon. It's
end of July, start of August.
So 3 weeks.
And so there's a couple of weeks for this to really start to boil over. Like NME, who are a pretty big music and event kind of magazine, or at least they were back in the day. They cover, like most of us, they cover what they gotta. But they've done a piece on this, and I can only imagine that the media around this is going to continue to ferment, both inside gaming culture and in the wider press. I suspect we'll see an amendment to this within a couple of weeks, where they say that they'll be capping attendance, or they will be enforcing social distancing, or they will be asking attendees to wear masks, or they will be swabbing, something like that. That'd be my gut on that one.
Get people to buy the tickets first and then tell them to wear a mask?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
Possibly.
Here to run a show, not make friends.
I wonder if I have a ticket, actually. Because it was to go last year, and then they pushed it out a couple of months, and then they cancelled it, and you're given the option of give us a refund or push out your ticket. So I think that I went for that option, which now I guess I'm regretting, because at the time I was like, look, I don't want the con to go bust, so just give me a ticket for the next one. But I still don't regret it as safe to go. So if they were to then force me to take a ticket to an event I don't want to go to, when I'd prefer to go, well, give me a ticket for 2022. I don't know.
Maybe sell it to your least favourite board game player.
Leave those poor guys alone. All right. So third on the block is another little bit of GW news. GW just put out their new edition of Age of Sigmar. Now, we famously did a review of Age of Sigmar entitled Rage of Sigmar when it first came out as this weird, crafted over a weekend bit of lunacy that got fired off in response to mysterious circumstances behind the thing, which led to people doing things like putting their army in a bin, filling the bin with petrol, and throwing a match in.
Oh dear.
So now we're on to the third edition of Age of Sigmar.
In 6 years.
Yeah.
I was thinking that's not that long ago.
It is not. It is not at all that long ago, but but third edition it do be. Now, one could wonder, how are you getting this big new rules book? And it's them trying to broaden the appeal of the game a little bit. It's them trying to tidy up some rules. Because the first ed wasn't a rule set. It was something they wrote on a weekend that was...
Those are some party games. Whoever's got the biggest beard wins.
You had to have a mustache. I've got a mustache. Oh, you made eye contact with me. You've got a penalty against my Slanesh demons. It was full of people a bit drunk, working very late on a Sunday, needing to get stuff in by Monday. And they wrote this stuff.
They tried to make sue them for trying to inject some fun and some, levity into the thing rather than just be so po-faced and serious.
If you pretended to ride a horse with one guy, you got more distance on your charge rolls.
It is the kind of the Mario Party version of the rules.
Look, I'm an orc player. If you paint stuff blue, you should get a reroll. If you stick a red stripe on it should go faster.
Hey, there's a place for that kind of rule set. It probably isn't front and center in your flagline product though. Do Magic Unglued, but don't expect people to don't make it tournament legal kind of thing. Was there a tournament scene for the first edition? Could there be a tournament scene for the first edition?
No, there couldn't be. Like, they didn't have points value.
There kind of ended up being one, but it was with rules that people hacked together themselves without official GW support, because it was all based on war scrolls and stuff, and nothing was balanced. And the official line from GW was kind of, just figure it out yourself.
Not only was nothing balanced, I could go, I'm bringing 50 Bloodthirsters. And Gio's question to me, do you have 50 Bloodthirster models? And I'm like, yes, they're... Well, prosper, live long and prosper, my friend. Like, that, there was no point.
Welcome in, sir.
There was nothing. It was just like, put out whatever you want. Both the gentlemen should agree to a reasonable battle. And I'm like, that's not a tournament system. You can't do that.
Well, like, my 50 Bloodthirsters, your 50 Bloodthirsters against my one squad of guys, we could well agree that my victory condition is if I survive a turn.
You ain't. You ain't gonna.
My credit card is bigger than your credit card, so I win.
If I get lucky and I deploy that terrain first, I could get it all in your way,
It really does feel like the purest version of tabletop wargaming. I spent more money on models.
I win. Sad to say it's true.
So yeah, I can see, off the back of that, you can see why they needed a second edition. Something a little tighter, a little more tournament friendly.
I wouldn't say tighter, I'd say halves the rules. Because the first one, they designed it effectively to fit on 4 pages of rules. That was what the game was. If I will hold it off this rulebook here, you will notice this one is not 4 pages of rules.
It's chunky.
This book is 360 pages of rules. Well, it's not all rules. It's hobby stuff as well, as you will be well familiar with if you've looked at any GW's output. They always have a hobby portion of it because they see it as a big part of the game. It's the hobby rather than just purely a game.
Those the heavy metal team got to pay their mortgages, right?
Absolutely. So Second Ed made it a game, really. And also what they did with Second Ed is they actually developed the backstory away from what it originally was. Because it's quite hard to say what Age of Sigmar was originally. The backstory has evolved significantly since then. And they've put it into its own space. This is... The thing about Age of Sigmar is, which one of the bits that a lot of older school people hate about it is not Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay or Warhammer Fantasy Battles done again. It is a very different game, both in gameplay, and also a very different setting.
It's very definitely high fantasy rather than... Old world stuff was very kind of low fantasy. Like, it was aiming at being grim and gritty, whereas Age of Sigmar is definitely the kind of high power fantasy thing.
It is heavy metal fantasy. In
hindsight, a great way to go. They looked at what they were doing, they looked at the sales numbers, and most importantly, they looked at the older members of the board and went, what do we do? And the old members kind of looked out from under their cows and went, have we stolen anything else from Michael Moorcock recently? They said, right, go get me some Michael Moorcock stuff and make a game out of it. And whoever's got the biggest mustache wins. It's very Moorcockian. The initial offering, they've kind of grounded it out a little bit more. It's I can see where they're landing. Feels a bit more like World of Warcraft as a setting now. It's kind of the Outland stuff, maybe. But yeah, they went pretty wild and they allowed themselves an enormous amount of creative freedom and kind of did Mad Libs with some of the names and faces you'd recognise, but shuffled around to give themselves a bit more juice. Cool. As it turns out, like, Old Hammer's back anyways, so it turns out you can have the best of both worlds. You just have to have a production team big enough to handle all of it. And they do.
Absolutely. Like, everyone's been renamed effectively to be copyrightable. So there's no dwarves, there's Durden. There's no elves, there's elves with a big A in the middle.
Or Enodath Deepkin if you want the beach elves.
Yeah, the sea elves are the Idionath Deepkin, the old high elves are the Luminath Realm Lords. They're all like, this is a thing. And they've kind of restructured the whole thing about a series of effectively infinite planes that the conflict takes place on. Each one of them is based on one of the winds of magic. And then there's a central 8 points where all the powers come together. And it used to be the Crossing Grounds, and now Archaon's taken that over, so it's the Chaos Place. And it would be significantly higher fantasy than nearly every D&D setting.
Oh, yeah.
It is significantly more out there in terms of what's going on.
It's starting at Planescape and then building a ramp into the stars.
It's nearly Exalted level of stuff.
Yeah.
That's cool. Suits the big personalities in the game.
It's a much more over-the-top setting on pretty much every level.
Okay, so the cemented things in Second Ed. Why third?
So third ed is them kind of setting out their stall in terms of, okay, we figured out what the setting is like now. We figured out what the kind of core plot lines of the setting is, and that it's these great strivings between these great kind of alliances, and the alliances are going to, I think, be tested a little more. There was order, destruction, chaos, and death. And now it's going to be some more stuff about the inter-alliances. They've had these kind of rotating storylines happening over the last little while, going a 4-book cycle with a storyline in them of like, this is Bellacor's big plot, this is the escape of Kragnos, this is the ascension of Morathi to godhood. So it's all these kind of discrete plot arcs they're doing. And they've come to, okay, we've set up our stall, let's do a new edition to intro people, and let's tidy up the rules a bit. And the tidying up the rules happened with some stuff where they're like, okay, so one of the most controversial aspects of the wargame as a wargame is there is something called the double turn.
What the hell's a double turn?
They have decided to keep the double turn, and I'll explain it. It is an I go, you go system. I have a turn, do all my stuff. You have a turn, you do all your stuff.
So far, so good.
There are some interactions in terms of close combat where it becomes a little more alternating activation. Where I go, this unit fights, so my guys throw attacks into you, you guys throw attacks into me, now you nominate a unit to fight, and back and forth. So there's a little more interaction, alternating activations in the combat phase, but otherwise it's I go, you go. At the end of the first turn, so we both take a turn, you take a turn, I take a turn, now we roll a dice. Winner gets to pick whether they go next or go second. So let's say I'm playing a shooting army. You go first, you move your guys up. I move my dudes up and shoot the hell out of you with my guns. I don't engage in close combat, I just shoot you. Now we roll off. I win, I go, you know what, I'd like to go again. Let's do a second round of shooting.
Any problems with this?
Yeah, a lot of games go, and then you got the double turn and I lost. So they have tried to make that a little less bad by basically going, you get more command points, which are effectively activatable abilities if you go second. So you get more command points, so you can spend those to do things like go, hey, these guys don't take a morale test and all run away. Or these guys get to reroll their charge. Or these guys get +1 to hit in shooting.
So it's kind of taking the leaf out of, what's the squad level one they released in the last year or two? The 40k one.
Kill Team or Warcry or...
Kill Team, yeah. Kill Team is all about that spending points from a commander pool point.
Yeah, you're free to spend your extra command points on whoever's left alive after 2 rounds of shooting. Okay.
They have put in one ability that seems hilariously powerful to me, which is basically like, Unleash Hell. It's when basically somebody charges one of your units. You can nominate one of your units to shoot at them at -1, so it's kind of like pseudo Overwatch. And I'm like, so wait a minute, if I get the double turn, I get to shoot you, then I get to shoot you again, then you charge me and I pick my biggest unit and you shoot again. That seems like a fairly good deal to me, and it seems that likely that big blocks of kind of infantry with tons of attacks are really strong. Now what they've done to turn that down a little bit is they've made it harder to take giant blocks of infantry. So now it's going to be much more a game of 5 to 10 man units. It's not going to be the block of, I've got 3 blocks of 60 infantry. You're not going to have that. You might have 1 block of 60 infantry, but that's kind of it. So they've been kind of fiddling with how it works. They've introduced a bunch of stuff to try and make the combat a bit more dynamic and like big moments. So they're trying to play for a bit of a cinematic style of play. We shall see if that actually works out or not, but that's been the goal of the tidying up the rule set and trying to make the game more and more about big moments that you do. Cool. We'll see if it works. I'm certainly going to give it a go. I bought a bunch of Cardoran Overlords, who are the dwarves flying airships. So I'm going to give them a go, see what they're like. So yeah, interesting to see it released. But yeah, that's one of the big releases of the week.
Well, don't blow all your money on new units. Put a little aside, because in 2 years' time, 4th edition should be hitting.
Oh yeah, be all monsters again, and spellcasters would be great.
I am curious about this shift in rules thing, because you made a point earlier that it's sort of designed to bring it more away from the very casual way it was in First Ed and more towards a very tournament-based, rigid rule set. And I guess I would have to assume, based on that they've discovered that is very much where their money is. That the tournament set really is where the business is for Warhammer.
I think the tournament guys are the guys who buy lots of minis and build lots of minis. Other people are happy to dip in, buy a few minis, paint them over a little bit of time, and be like, yeah, that's cool. I've got a bunch of stuff unpainted, but that's fine. I'll get to it eventually, right? They never do. But they're there kind of painting a few units. But this is one going, okay, let's have a look at the tournament thing. Because the tournament, it's a significant factor for them in terms of play, but also community-based stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah. Not to mention, there's so many more opportunities to sell other stuff at tournaments.
Yeah.
I mean, who's not going to the tournament with one bag full of armies, another bag full of money?
Yeah.
To get more armies.
I just find it an interesting contrast, because we contrast against Magic, which the last couple of years has gone very much more towards casual and experimental play, presumably on the back of, well, that's where most of our money gets, is that the Magic players who just buy a box for the laugh rather than the hardcore people trying to get in the Pro Tour. And then you compare this to Warhammer, which partly at the time of Age of Sigmar thought there's a vast untapped potential of casual players who just play with their mate Jimmy every Thursday, and then discovering that this was not a market, and it was in fact Johnny, the tournament guy who has 5 armies meticulously painted, that is the person that they wanted to sell to.
There's a difference though. If you want to be a casual Magic player, that often means playing drafts, which means you're constantly buying cards. A really skilled tournament players will often go to big tournaments and win a load of cards. So whereas if you want a tournament Warhammer player, they might have 3 or 4 armies on rotation, depending on how the meta goes. And that means they've got to maintain each one of those and basically build it up and buy all the stuff to get them going. And if you meta shift, so okay, big blocks of infantry aren't in, it's all monsters and heroes this time. So they got to go off and buy the new kits and restock their armies that way. It's a different sales model that leads you to different behavior. You know, that's what I'd suspect at least.
Like, don't ignore the fact that CCGs and Magic, especially at this point, are a speculative commodity.
I think as well you can pitch to your tournament players and not turn off your more casual players. But I think if you pitch to your casual players, I think you'll turn off your tournament players.
Yeah, as Shane sort of says, and that's exactly what I think they discovered, as I think Shane is pointing out, that the beer and pretzels game version of Age of Sigmar, with bouncing ping pong balls into the opponent's deployment zone to win the game, didn't really fly. There's such a thing as too casual.
They've also got a bunch of other games that kind of cater to, I want to play a little bit of a skirmish thing, or I want to play. They've got other ones that are kind of their intro ramp on, and so they're probably doing okay. Going okay, well, maybe people will graduate to the big boy stuff, but it's okay if they're just buying all the Warhammer Underworlds to come out, or all the Kill Team, or all their Warcry. So yeah. So
yeah, I really at this point wanted to dive into the unending mud volcano that is it 3 different companies that call themselves TSR duking it out?
Who knows? I think I'll start one. Why not?
We should.
But for now, rather than get into that mire of quicksand, this party's over.
Thanks for listening to The Adventure Party. You can find show notes and links to things we've mentioned at www.theadventuringparty.net and on our Facebook page. You can leave comments there, or talk to our Twitter account at AdventurePTY, or you can record a voice message at www.speakpipe.com/theadventuringparty. We can also be contacted directly by email at party@theadventuringparty.net. If you'd like to be in touch with the party all the time, come join our Discord server, link in the show notes. The Adventuring Party is released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike version 3 license.